Get ready, my soul. I'm diving in. Get ready, my soul. I'm diving in to the deepest kind of love, to the sweetest kind of life. Get ready, my soul. Get ready, my soul. I'm diving in. Get ready, my soul. I'm diving in to the deepest kind of love, to the sweetest kind of life. Get ready, my soul. Everything I've ever done, oh, everything I've ever seen, everything I've lost or won, oh, everything I've ever dreamed has brought me here to the present moment, here to a new beginning, here, and I'm seeing life so clearly now. Get ready, my soul. I'm diving in. Get ready, my soul's getting ready. I'm diving in to the sweetest kind of love, this loving, deepest kind of life. Get ready, get ready, get ready, get ready. My soul is ready. Yeah, sweetest life, the deepest love. I'm ready.
I've been sharing this image lately, and I just thought of a new perspective. It's interesting. I'm looking up at the light, whatever that is, whether it's the moon or a star. And you could say that that's the divine, but it's a mistake to think that that one light is the divine, because everything that it shines its beauty on is the divine. And then I thought, I'm looking at the reflection of the sky, perfectly reflected or reflected in that beautiful, calm, still lake. And I'm thinking that maybe the lake represents us and the sky represents all that is divine within us. And so we are a reflection of divinity itself. And whatever you want to take from this gorgeous picture, I'm just feeling that it's all sacred. And so let's use our breath as a gateway to enter meditation today. So take a deep cleansing breath. I invite you to close your eyes. With nothing to do but be present. Thinking about us being both a transmitter and a receiver. Just going into the receptive state right now. With our symbolic hands open, our mind open, our hearts open as we breathe. Resting deeper into the heart space. I'm thinking of the words inviting, willing, and receptive. I'm inviting in the healing and the resolution of all things. I'm inviting in the answers to all questions asked. As I breathe. Let's continue in the silence, knowing that the silence is not empty. As we end this meditation with one more deep breath, in appreciation for all things and in gratitude for this day. I call it blessed. And so it is. And we welcome again our friend David Ault from Atlanta.
I was getting all ready to listen to Laura again because she just, oof, she does it for me. But I'll hurry up. Hello, everybody. It has been exactly 4 weeks since I returned back to America from being overseas in Cambodia and India. And it was quite the trip, which was focused on filming the documentary of our origin story of the nonprofit Kaleidoscope Child Foundation and how that has evolved and brought education into slums and rural territories to so many kids over the years. And it was a lot. You know, if I was in my 30s, I realized I would make a really great movie producer because I was craft services and I was location scouts and I was coordinator and I was managing everybody. And we were talking earlier about how amazing the body is and the ability for the body to respond to whatever it is informationally that you throw at it. And it was like, this is what's got to be done. And doing it and then watching that body just sort of collapse. I think we call it cortisol, but there is something really powerful and very scientific with relationship to the mind and the body and ability. And so having been back and uh, resting and recuperating and getting my feet back, there's been a lot going on. And what I wanted to speak to you today is not something that just is kind of a random choice, but is something incredibly granular and incredibly valuable, and probably what is becoming for me one of the most valuable lessons that I can practice and implement. So I have to tell you how it started. I was listening while I was in India to some Ram Dass podcast, and he's telling a story about his father. His father was a self-made man, whatever that means, back in the day, but um, had created quite a reputation for himself as a hard worker and was very well known and prominent in the whole New England area. And he had a bunch of men friends, and they had this custom where they would go and they would rent this cabin maybe once every 2 months or whatever. And they would drink and smoke cigars and tell stories and sit around campfires and just do all those kinds of things. And he said that those escapes to this cabin was made particularly special when one of the local restaurateurs who happened to be from Italy would come and cook for everybody. And this man would come and he would make all of these amazing dishes. And he said once his father came back from one of those weekends away, and the man had been the cook, and he said that he made this incredible, incredible big vat of spaghetti. It's the best spaghetti he had ever eaten. And one of the gentlemen responded, and he said, "This is really delicious, but is it possible? Can I have some more sauce on mine?" And the restaurateur man stopped and very somberly looked at him and said, "Eat it like it is." And when he told this to his family, that phrase, "eat it like it is," became synonymous with every time somebody was displeased or wanted something different, or kind of threw, as we would call, a hissy fit about something going on. The whole family, the running joke was they would look at each other and they'd go, "Eat it like it is." And I started to laugh because he said, that's probably one of the most profound spiritual truths around. And he goes, we don't call it or use those words exactly to describe it. But he said there was a man named Thaddeus Golas back in the 70s that wrote a little pamphlet that became a book that was not intended to be published in any way. It was a man who achieved a certain level of enlightenment, and he wanted to help his friends not suffer anymore. And so he wrote this book called The Lazy Man's Guide to Enlightenment. And he said, first of all, I'm a lazy man. And if there's a way to get fast track enlightenment, I'm on it. And basically, the book is all around love it like it is. And so Ram Dass would think about his dad often about eat it like it is. And he said, there are many, many synonymous teachings out there that are coaching us and beckoning us to stop wanting something to be different and to pause long enough to feel and experience what does it mean to love it like it is. And when we talk about that, it feels incredibly radical, particularly when we are absorbed and seduced into the identity of being human. Because being human, there's a lot going on. This one particular plane of existence, the existence of duality and separation and the relative reality of pain and suffering, it seems very, very out of place to say something like, love it as it is. But here's the paradox, or here's the game. Just as we read in the opening affirmation, just as Laura was singing about diving deeper, to dive deeper means that we are being asked to cease looking at things from the human perspective. If we're going to really, really be advocates for a spiritual principle, which talks and speaks upon the singular truth that the only reality is God, or the only thing that is real is this indescribable, indefinable thing called love. We are so inept with our language to even begin to fully comprehend what infinite means. And yet, that's a beautiful part of being a spiritual seeker, is each time we lean into something more spacious, we get a little bit more taste, a little more experience, a little more embodiment of what something infinite or something beyond what we have labeled as normal was before. And so to love it like it is really requires an understanding of two dynamics. So, in A Course in Miracles, they say there's only two things going on, love or fear. It's very similar to that. Oftentimes we will say, I will say there's only two dynamics going on, remembering and forgetting. Same thing. But this thing really centers around, and forgive the jargon of this, the fact that all we are is energy. It's not woo-woo. It's not inconceivable. It actually really is true. What we are is not this skin suit, this space suit, this identity. What we are is this amalgamation of energy and infinite potentiality. And so those two dynamics are expansion or contraction. Expansion and contraction. So when you stop thinking or focusing singularly on the fact of a persona, a gender, a culture, a title, wife, mother, husband, son, daughter, all those labels, when you kind of have the ability to pause and set all of those identities aside and get very atomic and understand that what you are is energy. And when you can deeply appreciate the infinite nature of that, the miraculousness of that, and you go, okay, so through the power, the lawful power of choice, if I choose to be expansive, what happens within the framework of what I can understand with this bundle of energy? If I choose to contract, what then happens with this framework of energy? Pretty simple. And so if the goal, if we want to call it a goal, or the intention or the aim, then is to be more expansive than contracting, we could spend all day talking about all of the examples of that. Because without fully being aware, fully conscious of how those moment to moment thoughts and choices and interactions and dare I say, even regurgitations of habit that continue daily, monthly, yearly, decade, on and on and on, sometimes a whole lifetime. When those things do not get disrupted and we continue to compound restrictive things rather than expansive things, then it's no wonder that the experience of life is hard and arduous and that it paints a very divisive landscape. What's so beautifully compassionate about that is it's not a right or wrong issue. It's just an isness. It's a lawful thing that goes to the degree, three of my favorite words, to the degree that I sort of shake myself awake from the sleep of my forgetfulness. And I realize that if I, in this moment, decide that I'm going to practice loving everything as it is that expansive or is that contracting? And it's amazing to watch the mind, the egoic conceptual mind, kind of create all kinds of justifications as to why one should contract. And that's fine. But when we're singing, when Laura's singing about my soul is ready for something, I don't know what it is. Something is calling me to go deeper than the characteristics and the traits of my neighbors and my family and my culture. Something is asking me to remember who I am. And that in that remembrance, if I can just grasp and comprehend that what I am is energy, and when I begin to cultivate all kinds of things that are representative of expansion, what would happen? What would happen? So this documentary that I told you, it's been probably just under 2 years when my board and I were talking about succession. And I'm really clear on, and I got this from Ernest Holmes, the founder of Science of Mind, when he was talking about don't get wrapped up in legacy. Don't begin to get so focused on people remembering you or trying to establish legacy or holding on to symbology or even brick and mortar types of things, but rather focus on while we are here, what is the most optimum way in which we can serve? And not get hung up on how will they remember me, all that kind of stuff. Just do what it is that you're called to do. And I remember really loving that because there's always so much language around, even, admittedly, unspokenly, many of us get hung up on this idea of what's going to become of me, who will remember me. It doesn't matter. I'm energy. I'm expansive. Oh my God. What lies beyond is beyond comprehension, right? So what do I do? How do I maximize this incarnation as David right now? And I said, so we're going to talk about succession plans, but we're not going to talk about keeping things alive. We're going to go, what do we do on our part to leave no stone unturned, to leave no I undotted or T crossed with regards to giving it our all, so that if Kaleidoscope Child Foundation is meant to continue, we can go, we did everything that we could, and we let it go unattached, right? So we thought about things like endowment, and we crunched numbers and how much do you have to have in an endowment in order to have that work and pay for administration and programming and things like that. And we came up with this idea, wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be great if somehow there was a documentary? And about 4 weeks later, I get this call from this documentarian. Is that expansive or contracting? Oh, it was expansive. Oh my God, was it expansive? I was like, whoa. But then the deeper that we got into it, I realized that everyone on that creative team, that film team, knew nothing about fundraising. That's not their bailiwick. That's not what they do. They have a technical skill. That meant that now we were going to be responsible for funding this thing. And that felt really restrictive. And all of a sudden, everybody's trying to backpedal and go, we can't do this. We can't go to our donors and ask them to fund a film when we are so dependent on them for programming. And I said, okay, let's look at this way. We will not go to our donors. We will find new avenues and explore the possibility of what it would take in order to go through pre-production and production, and then worry about post-production afterwards. So we had a ballpark figure, and it was one expansive exercise after another. What would I need to do? I need to pick up the phone. I need to call this person. I need to travel and take a lunch with this person and present to them the bigger picture. And it was a year of I say the word exhaustive, only not energy wise, but just making sure that we answered and paid attention to everything that came to us. And I don't know if it's accurate to say that the universe has a sense of humor, but you know that 11th hour reference, like no wine before it's time? The crew has flown into Atlanta. We have had enough money to buy the tickets, to get the visas and the permits. We've done everything that we could from ground support to get there. But there was still a sizable chunk of change that was needed in order to pay these guys by the end of January. And we were about to get on the plane the next morning. And the one person who had, she wasn't sitting on the fence, but there was a bunch of personal things going on. She called the night that they were all at the house when we were getting ready to get up at the crack of dawn to drive to the airport to fly to Cambodia, and wired the money that night. And we knew that the guys, the crew, would be paid. The crew was stellar. So I'm not telling you that because it's like a wow sort of mythical story based upon look what happened. Because I think it's more than that. I think it's a part of the commonality of choosing expansion, even when you want to contract. So my point being, not every road that we travel down that feels like an expansive road is necessarily going to have that outcome. But does that mean traveling down that road is a waste of time? And so there have been many things where I've gone down that road, many things that you have pursued, perhaps that felt expansive. And then once you were traveling that, you pivoted or it didn't work out. But I will bet you when you look back, something in the category of deeper understanding was developed from that choice. Do you follow what I'm saying? And so when it comes down to is this expansive or contracting? It really is pretty elementary. And you can feel the difference. So to love it as it is, does not make you a doormat. It doesn't label you as someone who isn't advocating and sitting idly by while the world suffers. It means that you notice the relative reality of that, and you are still going to get up in the morning and you are going to create and you are going to pursue your joy and you are going to stop in every single moment and create your own litmus test of going, does this feel expansive or does it feel contracting? And if you lean and tilt more to expansive choices, then it's pretty mind-blowing what begins to happen. So there's 1,000 stories, 1,000 miracles, 1,000 endless nights and location shootings and things all through Cambodia and all the way to India that we could talk about for hours. But when all was said and done, I went to my little haven, which is we have friends that live in the Himalayas, and they have built a homestay in the side of a mountain. And it's just unbelievable. It's spectacular. We love them, they love us. And I needed my cave time. I needed to decompress there. I just knew that I just couldn't come directly back here, that I needed to process all of that. And in all the visits that we've gone to spend time with them, I've never had the opportunity to go, and it's about a 4-hour drive all the way through the Himalayas, through the mountains, to what is known as Babaji's Cave. So if you ever read Autobiography of a Yogi, you know the story, the lineage of Paramahansa Yogananda. You know the lineage, perhaps, or remember the story of how he was passed down this tradition of Kriya Yoga, a particular type of breath, and that it was foretold that he would bring that to the Western world. He would be one of the first Easterners to come and to introduce yogic practices to the West. And all of that origin of that story happened in a cave in the Himalayas, where an eternal being by the name of Babaji stood luminous in this forest mountain and called the name of a railroad worker by the name of Lahiri. What was magical about this story for many people is that Lahiri is labeled as a commoner, a householder, meaning he wasn't an ascetic. He wasn't somebody else living in a cave. He was working for the British system of the railroad at the time in 1861. And he's walking through on a break because this is going to be his new territory. And this luminous being goes, Lahiri, come, and called him by name. The story is that Lahiri, overcome, follows him into this cave where he is initiated in this type of breathing. The whole story is in Autobiography of a Yogi. And he is instructed not to give up his householder ways, to be in the world, but to now take this gift, this path of enlightenment, and spread it around. And so that cave is about 4 hours from where I'd be. And so I decided that as tired as I was going to make my way to Babaji's cave. I found a driver who didn't speak any English, but he was learning English by listening to Justin Bieber songs on the radio. So I had to listen to Justin Bieber for 4 hours going through the Himalayas to Babaji's cave. And I get there and it's very cold and I spend the night and then my trek starts the next morning. And it's a very famous cave. People from all over the world come. If you go in the summer months, the likelihood that you will sit outside and wait for hours before you can go in is kind of the way that it goes. It's winter months there. I get there first thing in the morning. I'm the only one. And I get to go into Babaji's cave. And I am thinking that something magnificent and honorable is going to happen to me in this cave, a cave that I have longed to go and spend time with. And the fact that Providence was shining upon me and I'm the only one, right? So I go in and I'm sitting there. And all that I can think about is Ram Dass going, eat it like it is. And then Ram Dass's challenge with government at the time of his life and how much he loathed Caspar Weinberger, who I believe was the chairman or the Department of Defense or something. A very famous story. Ram Dass told it endlessly over and over again. And you probably know the story, but he saw the incongruency, he saw the restriction energetically happening in him every single time that man either appeared on a television screen or he heard his name. His whole body would just like tense up. I would say he understood the dynamic between restriction and expansion. And it was like, I am willing to expand here, and I don't know what that looks like. And so his choice was to print out a picture of Caspar Weinberger and put it on his altar. So he had Jesus and Buddha and Krishna and his guru and Anandama, all these other saints and sages on this beautiful, elaborate puja where he would do his practice every morning. And then there was Caspar Weinberger right next, somewhere positioned in there. So he would say, "Good morning, Jesus. Good morning, Buddha. Good morning, Caspar." And on and on and on, he would do this exercise. And I'm sitting in Babaji's cave, and all that I can think about was, so when are you going to do that, David? When are you going to stop listening and being amused by the story and actually make an expansive choice to follow in the footsteps of what Ram Dass did and put that action into practice rather than just being amused by it? And I was almost like, really? That's all I'm going to get? Coming to this famous cave is that I need to go print some pictures off and put them on my altar? And yeah, that's what it was. And simultaneously with that, my husband got the email, federal worker. His last day is April the 30th. And just watching all of the expansion and the restriction, right? And so here's a little pathway then for expansion, because it's not a runway onto a highway where you immediately go from 0 to 100. To love it like it is has this wide berth of permission and practice. So number one is, we've been taught to change your thinking, change your life. That's all well and good. Here is, I will say, some of the incompleteness that I find with that. Because you can change things and then change it back. You can change a location and then go back to a previous location. And there's a difference between change and transformation. And so we can change the thinking, but we are using something that is the human part of will rather than being in the alignment of that which is the will of, I'll say God, but the will of that which is infinite. And what creates a sustainability then with thought is to not become concerned about changing the thought so much as to loving the thought as it is. And some of my biggest influences and teachers over the last year have been talking about nothing but that. Stop focusing on changing the thought and instead practice loving the thought. Loving the thought, meaning that when you love something, you let go of the grip of being attached to it. You let go of the opinion of whether the thought is right or wrong. You let go of anything that is restrictive around that says, ooh, you bad person for thinking that thought, which is that expansive or is that contracted? Contracting. But when you start to love the thought, recognizing, meaning that you're loving the fact that what humans do and share in a commonality is consciousness, human brain, and the activity of thought. And there are 60,000 thoughts a day. And if we don't find the wherewithal within us to just love that process as it is. Okay, that's the process, that's the game that I'm playing in. Then we will become so exhaustive in trying to be spiritual enough to manage those thoughts, to change those thoughts, which is ultimately saying we're labeling them as wrong rather than just loving the activity of what mind does. And then you begin to love yourself for having the thought. And then in that little book that Ram Dass referenced, The Lazy Man's Guide to Enlightenment, I'm even enjoying teaching from that. He's like, whatever you are doing, love yourself for doing it. Whatever you are thinking, love yourself for thinking it. Love is the only dimension that needs to be changed. If you are not sure how it feels to be loving, love yourself for not being sure how it feels. There is nothing on earth more important than the love which conscious beings feel towards each other, whether or not it is ever expressed. And so when you begin to look at just how do I get there? How do I even begin to get through all of the muck and mire of all the self-incriminating, hateful thoughts that I have about myself, about my past, my shame, my regret? So, David, what you're telling me is I'm supposed to love my shame? It's the only way that the shame is going to dissolve. And by loving everything as it is, again, it's not condoning it. So when I look at those pictures now on my altar and I practice loving what is that me giving up? Is that me condoning? Or is that me understanding that the greatest use of my time, talent, and treasure on this planet is not to participate in the activity of restriction, no matter how justified it is? Now, that doesn't mean that I don't put my advocacy hat on and I go and I march and I feed and I love and I do those things. But is it possible then, in the paradox of that, for me to walk into it not as the same energy that is fighting the systemic thing, but as something that is holding a vision, and a recognition that, good God, there is nothing more powerful than the activity of love. I am so glad to be here in the midst of what seems to be the impossible. And as I lean to it, what will be revealed to me, even if it's in the 11th hour, is the ways and the means for that love, for that expansion to find expression. My only job is to love it as it is, to love what is. And if you decide to do that, if you decide even to begin to toy or practice with that, my advice to you is not go announce it on Facebook. My advice to you is to not even share that and make that the most sacred, intimate covenant that you are willing to participate in. You're like, you know what? I don't know how many years I have left on this planet. Why would I want to waste one more hour in anything restrictive when what I am is energy and what I have before me is more than the capability of sitting with those things that are expansive? So there's a lot going on here in our household going, oh my God, what are we going to do? Income, choices, career. My husband's been in public health for 22 years. It's been his life, his passion. And there was a lot of restricted, and we both got to really instead of just giving lip service to all that, practice and go, how do we love this like it is? And at the same time, not sit and wallow in it, but begin to open up and go, okay, what's the expansive possibility with that? And to have experienced what has just gone on in our household in the last 2 weeks has been the most transformative, beautiful thing. Do we have a concrete answer yet, what we're going to do? No. And yet we're both waking up ridiculously, stupidly happy. Because when we are choosing these things that have to do with everything congruent with expansion, all we have to do is keep choosing that. All we have to do is keep choosing that. And these little things start to happen. Oh, people are calling. I don't even know who these people are. People are calling and I'm having these amazing conversations. Somebody came over. We have these Ram Dass meetup groups. Somebody came over because part of our service, as we've been feeding people every month, and we go, not sure how we're going to keep doing it, being able to do that. And then somebody who showed up at one of those meetings pulled me aside right here on my desk in my office and said, how can I buy the food for the remainder of the year for these meetups? I don't even never know this person. Watch how my voice goes up 3 hours. I mean, it's just like wild. But instead of it becoming something abnormal, it is the normalcy, I believe, of the stair stepping of choosing to be in the activity of expansion. And so just watch that. And to know that some things will look some way and some things will look different. And it's a day-by-day choice, just like anything else. And we will remember at times and we will forget. And hopefully when we forget, there will be somebody expansive who will tap us on the shoulder and help remind us of what we truly are, which is infinite energy beings. And there is nothing man-made. There's no government, human institution or thing that can hold that kind of energy back unless we choose to believe that. And so it is.
Whew. Thank you, David. You're a masterful storyteller on top of being so wise and humble and loving. Thank you. From the darkest place to a higher space, calling from every direction. On every single path I have stood strong, then cowered fast. What a strange perception. Well, life is demanding, but I am understanding. The best I could was where I stood for. under